The following is a transcript between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am, originally produced on April 6, 2021, under the constellation of Aries, examining in the mental week through the sacral chakra. Me. I know that the most existential questions of spiritual awakening are what, who, why, and what for. But perhaps for a Capricorn ascendant, since at the age of 28, the most important question are those born from the sacral chakra, beginning with the most desperate of all, how? I am. The sacral is the creative center and therefore the one that designs realities, the very creation. Its question is the one that leads us to look for the ways to realize it, to manifest something. The mode. In Indo-European, this question arises from the formation mode or means of realizing something, which you would say cow medi, cow being the object, that something, and med being the means, the form, the mode. In Latin, this question derived in cow modo, in that way, which in Spanish was translated by abbreviating both words to como. In English, the same thing happened, in which cow, KWO, was translated to HWO, adding the motive particle W-I, which we saw in the question why, thus giving HWO-WI, which gave rise to how. Both languages have the same origin, a way in which an object is developed. Mode, the word for med, which gives its origin to the idea of how to do something, is the word for measure. This is to say, it speaks of taking measurements, seeing the sizes of something, both on an objective and subjective, physical or conceptual level. Me. So the how defines the measurement of an object and therefore the steps in defining its shape. I am. A table will be defined by the measure of its four sides, the height of the wooden board, the width and the length of it. The measure with their limits are what define the table, differentiating it from a tree or a forest. The way it is cut, jointed, assembled, painted, constructed, gives meaning to what it is. The how differentiates a human from a diamond by the simple fact of the arrangement of carbon atoms. Without the definition of the how, all that exists would simply be atoms in a distorted way without measure. Me. So the how defines what we are. I am, by the simple fact of the word definition. It comes from the Latin de, towards or through, and fini, end, or end term. The definition is to bring something towards a limitation, to an end, to delimit an object in order to define it. And in this way, an object is determined. Me, delimit, delimit. Towards the limit, to the edge of something. To define, definite, equals to give it an end, a purpose, an objective. And thus, to determine, determini, is to set a boundary, a milestone that marks the end of something. I am. The waves of a sea have no way of limiting or enumerating themselves, for they are constant and incessantly transforming themselves. In the same way, the waves of vibration in the universe submerge or emerge from the dimensions, being impossible to determine, until they separate from each other, creating particles or generating membranes that give rise to cells. At these two levels, waves begin to be measurable and to give a limit to the unlimited, an end to the finite, and end to the indeterminate. For the universe, this means order. It means the ability to create. It is the ability to take the infinite white light and extract from it all of the colors. Me. But so far you are describing me more the measurements of things than the ways in which things are made. I am, just as the who defines the subjective and the what defines the objective, or just as the questions why and what for can be asked from the conditional or the unconditional, and the question which can be asked from choice or from the evolution of qualities. The question how can be asked from the measurement of a reality or from the way that reality is lived. Me, which is that of the ego and which is that of the essence. I am. The ego was designed to unify aspects, to be the gravity of the dream, the finite manifestation of the infinite. The ego is the measure of being. The ego is the delimitation, definition, and determination of an essence, of an infinite being. For this very reason, the ego does not understand eternity, but death. Thus, the ego will ask itself how it does things, the way in which it must carry out its life, its projects, its intentions. The ego will look for thousands of ways to subsist, analyzing all of the probabilities to obtain a determined result. Me. And the essence, then, will it do so by measuring realities? I am. The essence is infinite, eternal, unlimited, and therefore it needs to understand existence through the patterns that constitute it. The essence will assemble the ideas, joining particles, creating limits to understand what lives in itself, although it will never live it directly. The essence is the architect, the mathematician, the director of the work, who carries the square and the compass, and, by means of a ruler, regulates existence. Me, the word ruler, rule, as the equivalent of law, has an origin in the tool that we call a ruler to measure the size of things. I am. That's right. Ruler comes from regrere, to draw a line, with the suffix ula, U-L-A. It marks the instrument for drawing such a line. Regula, then, is the origin of both words, the instrument and the ruler, the tool and the law. Both draw lines, a path, a straight road. Rectus equals participle of regrere, although which not to be confused. The path delimits and marks an object, and for this reason it has been named law or regulation. The builder, the one who has the idea of the general plan, will design existence, life with a rule of patterns, connecting nodes by means of lines, vertices by means of edges, which allow him to trace these figures, which in an object constitute the form, and in a subject constitute the mode. Me. In other words, the being, the essence, is the designer of creation, delimiting the forms of creation, while the ego is the one who lives and experiences creation, seeking the ways to transcend the forms. I am. That's right. That's why the ego asks, how do I do it? And the being asks, how is it? Me. Wow. I just understood something very important in my life. I am. And what did you understand? Me. That all of my life I have been asking how to do things. In what way should I do this or that? Since I was 12 years old, I was asking myself, how will I do to communicate to all of these people? How will I do to fulfill my mission? I always ask myself, how? Is it better to do this project? How do I achieve my goals? How do I do this path? How do I connect better? How do I hear my higher self? How do I know what is my purpose? How do I know if I am on the right path? How do I get to my destination? How do I transcend my limits? How do I free myself from my patterns? And so on. So many hows. But all trying to finish something, to escape, to transcend, to move forward, to get rid of something, running away from the real question. I am. Tell me, what is the real question? Me. What does it look like? What does my purpose look like? What does my path look like? What does my mission look like? What do my patterns look like? What does my communication with others look like? What does my destiny look like? What do my limitations look like? What does my connection look like? What does my higher self look like? I focus on the future, on despairing about how to finish or do something, is rooted in the ego's will to survive. I am. But when instead of asking yourself in the future, you ask yourself in the present, and you begin to know the ways, and so you understand the patterns. Me, I understand now that my future is designed according to what I am, so the only manual to know what I should do and how I should do it is when I know every corner of what I am today. To know the steps to follow in the labyrinth, I must know the map of the labyrinth. I am. When you discover that your life is an equilateral triangle, you already know that the shape will lead you to have to turn 3 times at a 60-degree angle each time, and that the 3 paths you will have to take will depend on your speed and on your skill and how fast or agile you manage to make the turns when you reach the destination, each vertex. The how is not defined by the tools of the future, but by the who you are in the present. Me. This is why the I Am project is working so well, because I am doing it the way I am, not the way I hoped to be. Because I am communicating the way I am, the way I like, because I am living the way I like, talking to those I feel good with, doing what feels good to me, writing in prose and dialogues, teaching in an online school, connecting with the pyramids, feeling the world, receiving visitors from other countries, speaking without hiding anything about myself. Before, I was afraid. I was worried about the way I should do this. How? I was constantly asking myself. It has been many months since I have not asked myself this question, since I am. In June and in July 2020, I have my last how crisis, when due to the planetary quarantine, I could not travel to any of the planned sites. The way I was to do the path was very complicated, and every day I asked myself, how will I do it? How will I be able to do the I Am path? I am. And then I told you. My question was, how are you? Me. And my answer was, as I am. I am. And then you know what your path is like. For the life we design for ourselves runs according to the how we are. Observe how you are, and you will know how to fulfill your mission. And if what you are is not enough for you, never ask, how can I change? Me. What am I really like? I am, quomodo est, in Latin means how are you? Me, ego sum. Latin, it's I am. Mahassaha, Mahassaha.